Welcome to Politically Speaking. We've got a special online virtual studio show for you again this week, and glad you could join us. I'm delighted to welcome to our virtual studio two of my favorite guests. They've both been on the show before, never together. We have Maureen Adamson, the president of Fleming College, and Leo Gork, the president of Trent University, two of our finest, our college and university. They're major contributors to the economy. They're major employers in the community. And they've got some major headaches right now with COVID-19. It's been 2 months since the COVID crisis hit us, and we've seen Trent and Fleming step up and get involved in a lot of things. We're going to talk about what's happening with both of the schools. And I should mention, one of the first things I saw coming out of the community support was Maureen Adamson, the president of Fleming College, showed up in a musical video playing guitar. So Maureen, tell us a bit about that involvement.
Well, Leo was in that video too, as you will note. It was really about trying to see how we could do something for the community, and giving folks. It was early days, and folks were very anxious, and nothing better than coming together through music. We have some local musicians that were really suffering. Their gigs were all shut down, and we have a lot of students that were suffering too, not able to go home, not able to go back to their home countries. So we thought, what better thing to do than to get some of our finest musicians together with Greg Keeler, who Melissa Payne opens for, and that's how we got him. And then to have really important collaborative leaders like Leo showcased as part of that, because we truly are in it together. And as you know, we hit national news and CBC, and people really appreciated it.
And it is great to see the schools work together, and that's nothing new for the Peterborough area. You both have always done that. And Leo, did you have an instrument in hand, or were you just giving words of wisdom?
No, we were just holding up a sign that home is where the heart is, just to reinforce the message in these difficult times that it's good to be at home. It was great to be part of it. I too thought it was a wonderful video.
Great. And the students really have been impacted, and both schools have taken part in some fundraising and supporting students. You mentioned international students, Maureen. I believe, I don't know the exact number, but it's a pretty good percentage. What is the situation for international students at Fleming? Then we'll go over to Leo and ask him the same question.
Well, 30% of our full-time enrollment is represented by international students, many, if not most, from India. Some of those folks were unable to go home. We were able to have some carry through to spring semester, but it will create quite a challenge for us come fall semester with the travel restrictions and visa restrictions and all of those challenges.
And Leo, Trent's been a long time international student welcomer, and what's happening on the university front?
About 10% of our students are international students. And in the last few years, actually, we've been very consciously trying to move that number up, I think to 12 or to 15%. There will be real challenges for those students. I will have to say that it's also a challenge for the budget, because those 10% of students, they provide more than 10% of the budget at Trent. It might be 15 or 20% of the budget. And I would say that's the same across Canada. I think in a way, we've got a great university college system, but we built it in a way that counts on international students coming, and they bring lots of academic advantages as well as fiscal advantages. But it's going to be a real challenge when we have certainly far fewer international students. I think there'll still be some, but far fewer than we expected.
Yeah, because I guess in the whole COVID crisis, the intent was to head home when they can. And I know some students have been basically stranded in Peterborough because it's safer, or they couldn't get back to their communities. And Maureen, what kind of programs are you putting together for students that aren't able to get back to their home countries?
Well, first off, we wanted to make sure we provided some financial relief, and Fleming was able to establish a fund through the generosity of our community and through college funding of about 400,000 to help students out. We've got some student helplines, mental health, online supports, you know, any kind of counseling that's required, even through WebEx or phone, and really just trying to make sure we stay connected with the student online as much as possible so they know they can access us. If they need to come to the college in a very restricted way to pick up a laptop or something, we're trying to just make sure that they're as comfortable and as welcome as possible.
You mentioned the word online. We're online right now. It's something that you know, distance education has been going on for years, but it's really been ramped up in communications this way. Are both schools positioned well to do more online learning? And Leo, why don't we start with you on that?
So I would say yes, and in a way, we're all fortunate that this happened at a time when we've grown accustomed to online resources, but probably haven't been using them to their full capacity. I will admit that before the pandemic, I had never been in a Zoom meeting. I cannot count how many Zoom meetings I've been in, and classes have been done by Zoom. I would say that we're certainly bulking up on online programming. Some of the online that we ended up doing in the end of this term was a bit makeshift. It had to be in 3 days. We went from in-person classes to online. We will be much better prepared for the fall, though we are expecting to offer some in-person classes as well.
You know, Leo, you know, Trent University was primary liberal arts school. It's actually evolved where you've got a big science component, a lot more hands-on and laboratory activities. And some people might think that it will be a lot easier from the university academic point of view. But I know at the college, which is, you know, always counted on practical experience and hands-on, I think these challenges probably exist at both schools. And I'm just going to slide over to Maureen here and tell us, Maureen, how you will be impacted, because you've got, there's a picture behind me of that Kawartha Trade Center. It's pretty hard to do some online learning there, but it might be possible. But what's the approach you'll be taking when it comes to distant and online learning for Fleming?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jay. So, you know, when we had to do our pivot to online, we were able to do that for about 70% of our programs. There are things like welding that you just cannot deliver online. And so our first priority for the fall is to create safe environments to bring some of those winter students back and make sure that they can finish their courses at a appropriately physically distanced arrangement within that very center that you are mentioning. So we're going to try to do that. But it is very difficult, and we weren't able to deliver all online, and we're trying to make that up through what we're calling boot camps for the fall. And there are some things that are just quite difficult to deliver in that way in a vocational institution.
So, what does an institution, a college or university, I think you probably have, you know, each around 1,000 employees in this region at least. What's the first step that you take when you hear that the province is shutting down, people can't travel? Leo, what did you do when you first got that announcement or call or an inkling that was going to happen?
Well, in a way, it happened in a slightly different way at Trent, because what happened, and we did not know about this at the start, was that we had cases of COVID-19 on the campus. So
Right.
we immediately had to make decisions about what we were going to do to protect the health and safety of students and staff. And basically, I mean, within a matter of 12 hours, we made a decision, well, we will have to close the campuses. That's a very complicated thing to do. It means moving the courses all online or delivered remotely, moving students out of residences, and doing a whole lot of things with facilities that had to be done very, very quickly. So I will say it was an interesting experience.
Yeah. Now, Maureen, you've formed a task force. Tell us your experience when you realized some big things were going to happen. And both your schools have lots going on. You're winding down for the year, getting ready for whatever's going on in the summer. But then you hear the world's changing. What happened at Fleming College? And you've got 4 campuses around this region, I believe.
Yes, we do. We actually set a task force up in January, late January, when we could see this bubbling, across the borders. But we were relatively, slow moving. We bought some equipment and all of the rest of it. It wasn't until, like Leo said, it really hit home that we needed to ramp up, and so we made sure that, we had already shut some things down, like travel, any kind of faculty travel, anything like that. And we started to just sort of bite at the edges of it. But then we too had to make that decision on March 13th that it was time to close. And it's a tough decision and it affects a lot of people. And people literally were, going to their offices and taking stuff home.
And is there much activity at the college or the university now, or is it like a skeleton crew working there, or what's happening? Well, Maureen, why don't you answer that and we'll go over to Leo.
Sure. We have obviously our skeleton maintenance crew, and they're doing a super job just making sure that there's very restricted access, a very, very rigorous screening. If anyone wants to get in, they have to be pre-approved by their senior management team person, and just making sure that everything is cleaned regularly. And now we're starting to plan for what the configurations would look like for when we will be in person again for some of those labs. But if I could say one thing, staff and faculty at Fleming College were nothing short of heroes in the way they responded to all of this.
Oh, that's great. And Leo, you've got two campuses, and what's happening on both Oshawa and Peterborough sites?
So I'm going to back up just a little bit.
Sure.
I did want to mention that like Fleming, we had done some emergency planning, and one of the things, and it was just a fluke that helped us, was every year we do an emergency planning exercise just to be ready for whatever might happen. And this year, because I guess the pandemic was in the background, but without suspecting that the pandemic would be as difficult as it has been, 3 days before we closed down, we had done an emergency planning exercise. So from that point of view, we were very lucky. And then I would say, in addition to the luck, I would echo what Maureen has said. It was a headache in so many ways. There were so many decisions, moving 2,000 students off campus, taking care of students who had no place to go, changing course delivery methods. But it was tremendously inspiring to see faculty and staff come together and actually accomplish it. And the story now is our campus, there's very little going on. There are some labs that are open and a few sort of essential services, but they are very, very quiet at the moment.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both. We're at break time, and we'll be back to talk about a bit more and what both schools are doing to help out with healthcare and some of the other things happening in the community. So stay with us, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Politically Speaking. I have in our virtual studio Maureen Adamson from Fleming College and Leo Groark from Trent University. We're getting caught up on their response to the COVID crisis and operating a post-secondary institution under these circumstances. So one of the things both of our schools have been doing as the true corporate citizens you are is helping out with the crisis directly. And one of the things I think most of our viewers have seen is that we talked about residences emptying out before in the first half of the show, but you are opening those up for a very specific purpose. Maureen, tell us a bit about how you're helping healthcare with your residence building.
Sure, happy to. So we obviously needed to look after our students first, and some were not able to leave at the time that we were hoping they would. So we wanted to make sure they had safe departure. And we still have some international students there that we wanted to spread out and keep safe. But we've offered our space to the Peterborough Regional Hospital for their workers, to some long-term care facilities in the region, both here and in Lindsay. And just wanting to make sure that folks that are doing all this heroic work have safe places to go and stay.
Yeah. And Trent University doing something similar, Leo?
Yes, and in both regards, we still have international students on the campus, and we had one set of residences actually on Water Street which have single-use washrooms, which is key. So we put the international students there, and Zosky College, our Zosky College residences have been opened up for healthcare workers. Healthcare workers are in a very difficult situation. You're working on the front lines. In many cases, they're very nervous about going home to their families. So the preferred option is to stay someplace else while they're dealing with the crisis. So we've been very pleased to be able to open one of our residences to help healthcare workers in that situation.
You know, as this whole issue has moved forward, you know, we see daily briefings from the federal, provincial, even local governments and local entities updating people on what's happening. University and colleges work very closely with the province, and our viewers have seen on this channel and other channels, in fact, kudos to my colleagues who do a regular show with a COVID update. How has the province responded to the needs of universities and colleges with this crisis? Maureen, why don't we start with you?
So the presidents of universities, there's a colleges, sorry, Leo. We have been meeting about 3 times a week, very constant contact. And I must give full credit to the provincial government, the ministers on those calls many, many times, at least once a week. He's very accessible. He's very keen to try to support the challenges that we have. And so with all of the presidents, the government has stayed in very close contact to make sure they understand some of the challenges, both at the time of closure, but still continuing as we look to the future.
And Leo?
In the Trent case, the provincial government has provided almost $1 million in funding for COVID-related expenses. And the understanding is those are just for immediate expenses that we've incurred to deal with the crisis. We're also working with the ministry about longer term issues, what's happening in the fall. There's been some help, and they are interested in providing digital support for what we do from that point of view. A lot of those issues still have to be worked out, but I would agree that the provincial government has been very supportive.
I think both levels of government are, you know, they seem to be cooperating very well and have announced programs. They've tweaked them a bit. You mentioned there's a little, some funding. I shouldn't say $1 million's a little, but some funding coming through to help. What do you anticipate the impact will be on colleges? I'll stay with you. When it comes to enrollment, because obviously you do get funding from the government, but it's all based on enrollment tuition. What do you see the potential impacts that could be happening?
There's no doubt that fall is going to be a challenge. I would say our enrollment is made up of, on the one hand, international students, and many of them won't be able to get study permits. That's certainly how it's looking now. So there will be a challenge there. I think on the domestic side, it's a little difficult to predict, but I think it's certainly likely that some of those students won't want to go to post-secondary education. Some may want to do it all online. So I suspect there's a challenge there as well. And the principal driver of our budget is recruitment, the number of students we have. And there are going to be challenges, and not just for Trent. I'll let Maureen speak about colleges, but for all universities across Canada, there are going to be serious budget challenges in the fall. There's no doubt about it.
Maureen, Fleming's just gone through sort of a renewal. You've been on board for just over a year and a bit, and strategic planning. You've got some great visions. You've got some new projects you're partnering with the provincial government on. Do you see you'll be able to still move things forward and deal with progressing the college the way you've seen in your vision with the province, or what do you see the main challenge is going to be?
Yeah, I think that I should also back up a little bit. Fleming did receive some funding as well from the provincial government, about $750. It's really appreciated. But like the university, we are going to see a significant financial hit in the fall. There's no question about it. And it is around all of the things that Leo spoke about. The service management oversight contract that Fleming was awarded through a competitive process, it's a $60 million contract over 5 years. We see that as actually a very important opportunity during all of this. It is about getting people back to work. It's about employment stability. And those are the areas that we will be keeping whole to make sure that we can deliver on that contract. So it's actually, its timing is almost a perfect storm.
Well, you know, and that's the thing, there's job losses. We're seeing the unemployment, especially in service industries. When the recovery builds up, there will be opportunities in healthcare, medical devices, other types of economic drivers for the community. So it's interesting, even though you're right in the midst of things, looking forward to see where there might be opportunities. Leo, do you see anything at that with the science part of Trent University? You've got DNA labs, you've got, and again, the nursing program, that there's going to be a great need. And again, another example, this whole epidemic was an example of how valuable these people are we take for granted sometimes. So a lot of them come out of Trent, a lot of them come out of Fleming College.
So certainly, I think you're right. There will be some opportunities that come with the end of the crisis. Certainly, the governments are planning stimulus funding. It's not yet clear what the exact parameters will be, but we would certainly hope to be part of that. And I would mention the Clean Tech Commons. We're working on a long-term care facility. Obviously, a lot needs to be done in that regard. I think there will be lots of opportunities for both the university and the college as we come to the end of the crisis.
And Maureen, you have an association with St. Joseph's at Fleming. It's on your property. I believe you have students that do placements there. How is that relationship? And obviously, long-term care homes are having the most challenges with this COVID-19. Tell us a bit about your relationship with St. Joseph Fleming and what you might see coming out of this.
Well, we have a great relationship, obviously, but I could see some very much enhanced things that we could be doing together. I have to tell you, I was so proud that Fleming College was able to donate some PPE to St. Joseph's at Fleming that was so desperately needed. And I think Carol Rod's doing a great job there, and she and I will certainly be looking to what we can improve in the future. And to Leo's point, lots to be fixed in that arena, but I think St. Joe's has done a great job.
You know, yeah, it really has elevated the level of how important those institutions, but the people that work there are to our older citizens, and you know, both of your schools have some connection to that as well. Leo, on something positive, you've got Trent Talk series happening. Tell us a little bit about that. This is an online opportunity for people to talk to your chancellor and other folks.
That's right. So one of the things we have is we have a lot of intellectual resources that we want to make available to the community. So we have put together a series of talks. They're called Trent Talks. They've been organized by our chancellor, and we're trying to pick topics that are very relevant. So in the first talk, we had an epidemiologist, Craig Brunetti, and the Dean of Nursing, Kirsten Woodend, talking about the crisis and moving forward. So that's just another way in which we're trying to support the community.
Maureen, we're up almost out of time, but is there anything else you wanted to talk about Fleming's engagement and what's happening around the college and with the community?
You know, I would just say, Jay, thank you for your community leadership. And I have to say, you know, Leo and I collaborate quite nicely. And I think we're a bit of a beacon of what two schools can do together in a community like this. So I want to thank both of you.
Well, you know, it's I could have had you each on for an hour because there's so much going on, but we wanted to just give a little taste of what's happening with our very important community contributors. You know, Fleming at one end of the town, college at Trent at the other. They're so important, and the students we're definitely missing our students. I know there's still some around, and whether they're from here or down the road in Ontario, around the world, they're a big part of the fabric here in the Peterborough community. And when we come back on in the fall, when we get some semblance of a new normal, you're two of my favorite guests. Maybe I'll have you on again together. Maybe we'll be back in the studio. But I do love seeing that cooperation. And when our invitation went out, you both stepped right up. I know you've got a lot on your plates. You're probably sick of Zooming, but I'm so glad you spent some time with us today. And I got it before I go out, and I do thank you both very much. I do have a viewer of the week. You know, I find the odd viewer of the week. I got a note from Sylvia Sutherland after the last show, and she actually watched the show, and she wasn't on it, and she's one of our guest panelists. So former Mayor Sylvia Sutherland, thanks for watching the show. And I know she's well acquainted with both Trent University and Fleming College, so she's a very appropriate viewer of the week. And I want to say thank you to all our viewers. We'll see you next time here on Politically Speaking.